Good afternoon. Welcome to Freight Forecasting. I'm Michael Vincent, your host, freight forecaster here at FreightWaves, and with me is
Zach Strickland.
Zach, the Sultan of Sonar Strickland. So, Zach, I wanted to talk today a little bit about the effect of the different of how the different modes interact with each other of transportation, right? So, imports, maritime, how those affect the port cities, how those affect intermodal, and then down the line into inland markets, right?
Right.
Something I've been posting on LinkedIn and been talking about for quite a while is the need to actually understand that interplay between the different modes and the different demands on those modes and how that affects your supply chain or affects, even if you're in middle America, how does maritime into San Francisco or into LA or into Savannah or Charleston, how is that going to affect you and how do you get that information?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's something that we never really even thought about back in our day.
No.
When we were trying to figure out, oh, why are volumes down? Why is revenue down?
Yeah.
As an asset-based carrier hauling a commodity that we could have actually benefited from knowing tremendously what kind of volumes are coming into the United States.
And that's a great point, because 3 years ago when Craig Fuller, our founder CEO, was explaining to me and several others what his ideas were. I mean, the attraction from me and others was, man, for the last 28 years of my life, I'd have killed to have this type of information that we're planning on bringing together, right? To have this type of visibility. So here it is.
Yeah, no, it's not simply about seeing, when we're talking more about the tender volumes and tender rejections, that's kind of what's happening right now or as some sort of result, and it helps you see the freight flow in the United States as it is today. What we're talking about today is all the stuff that's coming in that loads up the market. So the freight potential in the environment that we're operating in, for instance. So we always talk about Los Angeles, for instance. I mean, on numerous channels we talk about, if we're looking at Los Angeles volumes, what's going on there? That's basically loading the freight cannon, if you will, for the amount of freight that's available to ship throughout the United States.
The freight cannon.
Yeah, I mean, before all this COVID stuff hit, we watched a huge amount of freight come into the country last year with the trade war, et cetera, and we saw the warehousing. They were just moving freight around the coast there, and then all of a sudden, boom, we have all this freight moving out of those markets into the rest of the country.
Yeah, and it's interesting to me because people understand that concept of when those imports start coming in and when it picks up, that you eventually start seeing volumes in other modes and in other markets. So what I wanted to do was kind of dig in and show how you can use different data sets to see kind of time frame how that's going to work and how that actually moves from, say, Port of Shanghai that we're looking at right now, and Yunjin and so on, and Antwerp and Ningbo and so on.
It is important to note that building off what I just said, last year was a little bit different situation in terms of pulling freight into the country. That was pulled in front of demand. Now that we've run down some inventory levels, it's going to be even more important to watch this stuff because the time period between when you see this freight on the shipping containers and when you see it on a truck is going to be a lot more contracted moving forward because a lot of this freight now is going to be signaling demand. It's going to be pulled in front or as it responds to the demand that some of these companies are seeing right now. So the gaps and the all the retail outlets out there that are canceling these shipping orders, once the economy starts picking back up again, once people stop sheltering at home, we're going to see these signals on the ocean first before things start pumping up again.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. All right, so let's dig into this. If we can expand this screen that we have behind us so the viewers can see it a little bit better, more clearly, thank you. So on the left-hand side here, what we're looking at is the maritime exports shipments to the U.S. from as far as the origin ports is a daily move. Right? So now we're hearing China's back online, et cetera. They're coming back up. Maybe they're 100%, maybe they're 90%, maybe they're 85%. What is it? I've heard that, they're online and they're manufacturing, but the demand is soft. So they're sputtering getting up. And that's going to happen throughout. We get that. We talk about that. It's going to sputter as everybody's on different timelines. But so if they're minus 15.5% on this chart, does that mean they're really not online?
No, it just means by the same point and the previous value, it's down 15.5%. There's daily fluctuations in this stuff because it is a daily number.
Right.
So you need to look at it as a trend, as you have, pulled up on. The gauge charts are good because it's going to allow you to see just exactly where they are historically speaking, if it's a high amount of freight, a low amount of freight over the last 52 weeks and whatnot.
Yeah, that's the other part of it. So, I mean, specifically when we move from this screen, we'll look at this one here, the one that I have near the top here, the Los Angeles. We'll take a look at that, and I just opened it up, so we'll take a look at what's going on there. But you can see that it is quite volatile.
Yeah.
Right? But when you look at the last month,
we're coming up.
We're coming back up.
Yep.
And it is this spike, but things come online, demand fluctuates. We were talking earlier on the coronavirus freight market update about the fact that you have repositioning of empties as well to be able to pick up this freight and move it, which delays things. So it moves and you got to pick up and move. So it's fragmented. But
yeah, and those empty movements can signal things as well. As people are pulling empties because the ocean, the marine carriers actually control a lot of these international container movements, and they will pull those containers and they direct them where to go. The rail lines own the 53-footers, and the JB Hunts of the world own those, but the international container lines control the 20 and 40-foot container movement.
Right. So when we're looking at this, we're looking at a daily, and I like to see what's moving on daily because then I can see what's going on immediate. And I think this is more of a bias towards the immediate reaction or actions you can take when you're looking at the sonar data as far as domestic markets and truckload, right?
Right.
If you see it up, down in a day, you can make immediate decisions based on what customers you have, if you're a provider of capacity or if you're a shipper, what is going to happen to you that day and get with your providers, right?
Right.
Not so much here on a daily basis. If you're inland surface transportation manufacturer here, the daily basis of these movements is not as important as it is when you start looking at, say, this particular chart on the right-hand side, which is showing you the U.S. Custom Maritime shipments into the United States. Now, this is everything. This is not China to the United States. This gives you a little bit better situation or information as to what's going on. And then if you look at the CSTM dot, is it CHUSA?
CHN USA.
And we bring that up, and now you can see what's going on with China. Let me enlarge that font for you. I have the technology.
You can do it.
There you go.
There it is.
So, I mean, obviously China...
They got a lot to do with our freight volume.
Right? Yeah. They mimic what's going on.
At least the
there.
movements.
The movements absolutely mimic them, but you can see what is going on, and it is definitely on the uprise. Now it has dropped, but I think what you're seeing here, and I don't know, I think you would agree, is U.S. demand is dropping right now.
Yeah, no, I think we've seen a lot of cancellations for the summer movements and stuff like that. So as people are not producing as much stuff or purchasing as many things, a lot of these orders are getting canceled before they even show up in the country. But this is why this is so important, because you're looking at something, China's production, it's basically invisible to us. We can't tell. USA demand side, it's kind of intuitive that we expect the demand to fall, but this also validates how much demand is falling, how much it's falling, how much China's able to supply us. So it's both things. So if this number ever starts climbing back up again significantly, we definitely can tell, hey, there's going to be a lot more potential for freight in the United States. Right. Therefore, we need to be ready for it if it does ship.
Yeah, and that's a good point. In the United States, that's what we're looking at here. Is this is China to the U.S. It's the world to the U.S. It's imports into all of the U.S., not particular markets, right? Is what we're looking at right here. So there is some online activity or activity of China coming back online. You can see that in those trends, and you can definitely see the trend of the demand in the United States for imports is absolutely been dropping since the 24th. Yeah, it is most definitely coming down.
Yeah, and it is hard to tell how much this, this is a pretty long trend line of a downslope right here, so we can probably lend some credence to the fact that things are maybe either not quite ready or these orders are still getting canceled at the moment.
Yeah. Exactly. So let me open up. Let's go here, because that was the U.S. So how does that affect me if I'm in this market? You can't run your business based on everything that's happening in the United States. Well, most can. Some companies can, I suppose.
You can if you're trying to yeah, if you're trying to benchmark yourself against the rest of the economy, the rest of the the world, import, freight movements, et cetera. It's good to know that, hey, our volumes are down 10%, but these volumes are down 20%. So we're actually doing better than the rest of the economy or the United States or whoever you're benchmarking against. It is important to know just how well your industry or sector or whatever your niche is performing compared to the rest of the world.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so, all right, so sticking on the vein of imports, and now we're going to extend that into Dallas. So we're looking at China coming online and just imports. So how do we get from China to what is going to happen in Dallas in the next week or 2 weeks? How do we use that data? Right?
I have no idea.
You have no idea. I'm going to teach you. So the 3D map here that we're using in Sonar, I've got the core plethora, the color, is imports.
Yep.
All right. So we can see the imports.
The darker the blue, the more imports, et cetera. Yeah.
Yeah. The darker the blue, the more imports. So these are specifically maritime imports.
Yes.
It's not measuring air.
Correct.
Or I guess in the case of Southern California, could be surface too. But and also the outbound tender rejects is what it's showing on the height. And if I move this, you can see the difference here. It's still elevated in this area, and imports are flowing into Long Beach, LAX. They're combined in this market, right? Yeah. We have other tickers where you can break those two different ports out, but
yeah, and I mean it's pretty obvious that Long Beach, LA is one of the strongest areas for imports in the United States, because that's why it's so dark blue. Not a lot of import activity in Arizona right now.
Yeah, maritime.
Maritime imports. Yeah.
Or Utah, Montana's pretty weak.
Yeah, maritime, I should say.
Right.
But yeah, you can look at Houston, and you can see Savannah down here.
You can see Houston, Savannah.
That's Norfolk, and then of course you've got New York, New Jersey, which is the second largest import area.
Which is always strong.
Yep.
Which is always strong, right? So those are so we see Los Angeles imports are really strong, right? So now let's take that a step further. When we're looking at LA, and we could break up that market, but that's not the point. When there's a surge or when imports maritime are growing, what industries are affected there, right? So you've got the drayage, obviously, and then you've got warehousing, you've got local movements that go up, and then warehousing, and then it starts to get distributed. Most people look at, okay, imports are coming, are uptick, so we should see volumes rise in the United States. And that's all they think about, okay? Right. Yeah, it's strong, things are gonna be beautiful. But, so how do we piece this together?
How do we translate?
From LA to Dallas. Yeah. How do we translate that and see that?
And you do have to have a little bit of knowledge of how freight flows work in the United States. In the infrastructure that is set up, the way this normally works is you have imports that come in and they're on a ship. And these are containers, and then you have those big gantry cranes that are offloading those containers.
Those are fun to drive. I had to train on one in my former
tropical shipping days.
Yeah.
And then they'll transload those over to either the rail or a drayage provider. A lot of these containers, these 20 and 40-foot containers, get transferred directly to a rail. Right. Which is why you're about to show us the rail volume.
Am I? Oh.
I thought.
There it is.
If you're not.
Can you read that?
Nope.
All right. Then what I do is I just click on this. See this 1 month? And I can show you what's happening for the last month. Or I can show you what's happening for the last 3 months.
And there's no correlation whatsoever. I mean, there's a huge correlation between...
Imports have no effect on the outbound intermodal 40-foot containers between Los Angeles and Dallas.
And you can even see the lag.
Yeah, you absolutely can.
It's that clear cut. Obviously drayage providers can probably see this as well.
Sure.
On their end, but things come into the country, they get transloaded onto the rails. These don't get transitioned directly into warehouses. You know, a lot of this stuff is going on the trains, and then it enters a warehouse somewhere down the line.
Right, and in this case, it would be Dallas. I mean, these are 40-foot containers. These are not these are not rail cars. These are not tanks and so on.
Yeah, and you have the green line here is the customs import data. So you can see there's a slight lag between the the customs import data into Los Angeles going to the rail and then heading over to Dallas.
And then heading over to Dallas. And then heading over to Dallas. And this rail, I mean, you can look at this both ways, right? When you're looking at this, at these imports, right? And correct me if I'm wrong, but the way I'm looking at this, if you're looking at these imports, and then you're saying, okay, that translates to the rail, right? These imports translates to this rail movement into Dallas, which would then affect warehousing in Dallas, which also affects would also affect then local first,
right?
Local moves, city moves, less than 100.
Local drayage, because it's got to
local drayage.
It's got to come off the rail, get positioned into whatever facility it needs to go to.
And then some point down the line, it's going to start hitting your short, medium, tweener, and long haul moves.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
But then when you look at this, you also see this lag. Right here. So the other way to look at this is, yes, these imports are predicting this and showing this, and you can see how they're absolutely correlated. The other is that if you're looking at 40-foot containers, you know where the imports are moving.
Yep.
Right? I mean, you look at it both ways.
Yeah, I mean, especially when they enter the rail. Normally when you put something on the rail, you're trying to cover the most distance, you can before getting on a truck. You're ignoring, you're not ignoring, but these are things that don't necessarily need to move as fast, expeditiously. They're things that they're trying to load up and prepare that specific area for whatever demand they're anticipating.
So what you're saying is this tends more to be replenishment of inventory and manufacturing.
Yes, correct. Yeah, the expedited stuff, the things that get on the truck, typically they need that really fast. And I think in the next few months, we're really going to see, increased long haul freight movement as a percentage because of that.
So yeah, you would see that you would expect that this CSTM or the maritime imports daily into Long Island or Long Beach, Los Angeles. Sorry, just completely lost my mind there for a second. Will correlate more strongly to long haul.
Yes.
Because there is a correlation there, but it's not as much as it is to rail,
right?
As we've looked at many different times.
Sure.
So let's take a look at another chart here again.
So now we're in Dallas.
Open this up.
Yeah. So now we're in Dallas.
Right? And what I want to do is I want to move these so I have them side by side. So let's move this here. And hopefully this isn't too crowded for everybody. And if it is, we'll just talk to it really quickly as far as these dates are concerned, right? So if I move this over, we're looking at this rail starting to peak here. These shipments starting to peak here and the rail starting to peak here as well, right? But you've got this peak that it's coming down off of from the 21st and into the end of March, right? And then if we move this back over, we're looking at a time frame here of the beginning of March.
Right.
So you see those imports and the rail from back in this area now hitting Dallas. Also fueled by panic-driven demand.
Yeah, panic buying.
I'm not discounting that whatsoever.
Right.
That's absolutely inside here in this hill. But you can see that lag as well with the imports hitting.
And what's fascinating to look at in terms of looking at that red line over there on the outbound rail, 40 container, Los Angeles to Dallas, is we're actually seeing that there's a little bit of a signal here.
Oh yeah.
Of they're pulling freight into this market as the volumes are declining. So
yeah, that's exactly right.
This is a sign to carriers, especially local carriers out there that are working on the drayage yards and stuff like that.
And that's a great point. So let's go to this. Okay, so let me put this on to 1 month. There we go.
So we got all our length of hauls out of Dallas. So all the length of hauls here, long haul, tweener haul, mid haul, short haul, and city haul, all represented here. We talked about these last week, I believe, where you This is different types of freight that's moving in this area. So what we're looking at, what we should be seeing is here in the near future is a little bit of a surge in that local haul, that COTVI .DAL that is going to be a little bit more prevalent as those rail volumes start to increase because these are replenishment orders going into the warehouses.
I was trying to bring up the O-rail, which
there we
wasn't
go.
coming up. There you go. I got it back on there.
Let's see. COTVI right here is in that green line, and it's coming down right now. But anybody that moves local freight in this market right now needs to be on high alert because of these surging inbound rail volumes coming in.
Right, and then hopefully demand will start to pick up in the next couple weeks or 3-4 weeks, hopefully, as parts of the country come back online and start hitting those rails. But the inventory's coming.
Right.
You can see it very clearly right here. And so that short haul, like you're saying, you need to be on high alert. That's happening.
Yeah.
Right.
And this is all going to happen very quickly.
Yeah.
Here in the near future. I mean, these supply chain, this demand and supply interaction that we've been so accustomed to seeing happening over months or even years play out. We saw the trade war last year really play out in a very slow pace in terms of how inventory was coming into the country. They were literally just bringing as much stuff as they could into the United States.
Right.
That's gone. Now we're waiting on China to come all the way back online. Are those production facilities even available? When demand does pick up eventually, as it will, inevitably, and it will probably happen just as quickly as things shut down. So there's going to be different portions of this that are going to impact these trucking volumes here in the near future.
And that's an interesting thing because, I mean, it really almost has nothing to do with what we're talking here, but I love that point of when it comes back online, it's going to come back. It could come back on just as fast as it turned off.
Yeah.
Right? Because we've talked about a V-shape or U-shaped or a wavelength shape type of recovery. I'm of the mind that if this lasts, if we're quarantined for another month, when it's like, hey, go, people are just going to go.
And this is going to be one of the most important things to look at over that month.
You
because
need to watch what's happening.
You're basically watching them load the gun, if you will, for the amount of freight that's going to be available. And so when these things start to pop off, this is going to be the first area because right now they've got time. They've got time to pull some inventory in some of these areas, especially some of these industries, not necessarily your food and beverage or consumer products at this point, but some of these other industries are certainly in this data right here.
I hope there's some toilet paper in that red line.
Yeah.
So then here's a little twist. So we're talking about all these as the effect of imports coming into Dallas, because nobody ships anything from Dallas. It comes somewhere else and then ships from Dallas. Isn't that right?
Yeah, most of the time it's a midway point. A lot of DCs.
It is, but I'm saying that a little facetiously. I mean, sarcasm like wasn't too bright, but yeah, it is absolutely. I mean, it's just like L.A. to Chicago. We could have put that same change DAL to CHI, and you just saw the same correlation between Chicago market and the imports coming into L.A. along the rail, the intermodal, and then hitting the local. You just seen the same thing because they're both huge lanes on the rail.
Sure.
But so
they
what
do
I was
make
getting
stuff.
to was
they do make stuff in Dallas.
They do make stuff in Dallas, right? And brisket tacos.
They're delicious.
And they should ship the hell out of those is what they should do.
So you're pulling up what? The federal government's general business activity?
Yes.
Which
so
is
the general business, the current general business, and then on the right-hand side is the future.
Yep. So it's essentially, it's a diffusion index, as we call them, where anything above a zero is considered expansion, anything below a zero is considered contraction. And you see that red line over there on your current general business activity. We're down negative 63.9. So basically a bunch of executives have said, we're not
doing anything.
We're not doing things right now.
Right now, we are shut down.
We don't expect a lot of activity moving here in the near term. We've seen it drop from a 5, which was not very expansive, all the way down to
not incredibly strong to begin with, right?
To a negative 63. So it's one of the weakest numbers. I think. I don't.
How far back do we have this data in here? The screen's not large enough, but we've got a year or so, a couple of years.
It's a pretty nasty.
I mean, it's not good.
Yeah, it's not good, but that's the way it is.
Particularly, and let me grab these crosshairs so we can see it. This is a massive drop.
Which is
and does it have orders in this? Is this orders in there as well? As long
So
they put some data in there with the sentiment, or
they ask them questions based on things like orders, manufacturing numbers, production levels, et cetera, employment, and they combine it into this index. And of course, the employment levels probably have a lot to do with this dropping value as well, considering we just had a big employment level release. So that's the current. This is the future. So this is the anticipated. Yeah,
the one on the right-hand side. Yeah. Okay. So so this is the anticipated. So this is their sentiment of what they think is going on. Near so the graph is, the chart is showing us what the sentiment is today. Do we have an indication of what they're thinking? Like, there's today a negative 36. Is that their sentiment for 2035? Or is it for?
It's for the next couple of months.
Next couple of months.
Yeah, it's not necessarily. I don't think it's very well defined over what they put it in, but it's generally like
maybe future quarter.
Yeah, future quarter. I don't think anybody has a lot of optimism for the quarter itself, just because of the fact that if we are shut down for the month of April, the whole quarter itself will be at risk.
Right. And so I bring this up because you're looking at outbound tender volumes that are dropping. For tech, and I have it for Dallas. The origin is actually Dallas. Right? And the green is for the state of Texas. Outbound loads for the entire Texas. I don't know if you knew we had that in there.
Yeah, I did.
You can measure it. A state as well as a market.
Outbound volumes for all the states.
And you can break it up by region. But I just wanted to show that because
you can see
this general for Dallas, it's the Dallas Fed. But it's for all of Texas as a region. It's not specifically the sentiment for just Dallas.
Right.
And that's why I brought up the state as well.
I believe it also includes Oklahoma.
It does.
As well.
There's regions, because there's there's the Empire, which is New York, et cetera, in New England, and then there's Philly that has, and then Atlanta has like the Southeast and so on. But so why do I bring this up?
Well, it's extremely divergent.
Can you guess? Because it's completely different than what we're seeing on the imports. And so you've got to temper. If you were just going off the imports, you'd be saying, hey, inventory's coming. We're going to be moving. You need multiple data sets, not just the different modes, and not just looking at different markets and how they interplay, but also here, if you're in transportation, you need to be monitoring this type of information as well, the economic information, not only consumer sentiments, but surveys of actual manufacturing and what they're seeing right now.
Yeah, and as a carrier, you're going to know if your freight is being manufactured in Dallas or if it is simply a flow-through DC point. So if you are, shipping freight, that originates in Dallas and you're picking up on those docks straight from the manufacturer, you know that they're not expecting a lot of activity right now. But if you are picking up from one of those DCs, there's numerous DCs positioned around the Dallas market, you can actually expect a little bit more activity out of that.
Excellent. Zach, thank you, my friend.
Yes, sir.
I appreciate it. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Thursdays, 4 o'clock, freight forecasting. Check it out. And until then, peace and love.